Welcome back to Ghana Tonight. We are live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279, all across the world on 3news.com. And keep your comments coming in. Lots of you asking the questions of the State of the Nation address. Member of Parliament for the Ashaiman constituency in the Greater Accra region, NS Henry Nogbe, he has actually disclosed that 150 out of the 184 persons who were arrested in the military swoop have been released. Now, the remaining 34, we understand, are in military custody. Now, the 184 were arrested in connection with the murder of the 22-year-old soldier over the weekend. He spoke earlier on News 360, but take a listen to this.
Out of the 184, 150 have been released. As we speak now, we have about 34 left with the military, which they state that they are still screening them. So by close of tomorrow, we will know whatever outcome may come out from the screening. And so by and large, they have released 150. I just met that 150, including their family. As I speak with you, I'm still at that meeting, calming situations down, and then assuring them that we are going to take charge of the situation and also provide some leadership for them, so none of them should take the law into their hands. What is intriguing now is that the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in his State of the Nation address, was not able to mention or to state a paragraph or even a line to console the bereaved family of the deceased soldier and also to condemn the attack on innocent citizens of Ashaiman yesterday. I see that as very disappointing about the president. It doesn't mean that the president is so insensitive that whatever happened yesterday in Ashaiman, he wanted to pay deaf ears to it. That is what we are disappointed in. But by and large, calm has returned to Ashaiman, and we are all in a stable condition.
Well, so that's the MP giving us updates of what's happened. And some of the residents actually reached out to us, indicating that they had seen some military vehicles in Ashaiman. This was about 5 hours ago. So, yes, that's according to the residents, that there were some military personnel sighted there. But this is just to refresh our minds why many were expecting the president to talk about both the killing, alleged killing of this military officer, and the brutalities that members of the general public who have not been identified as being the culprits had to suffer at the hands of the military yesterday. But you take a look at this.
Around somewhere, they were beating some people. And I started hearing a knock from the main door.
Yeah.
I don't even know how they managed to enter. So when they entered, they broke this door. They dragged me out and started beating me. They started asking me whether I know Moro. I don't even know the guy. I've not seen the guy before. Even the day he was killed, I just heard the rumors around. I didn't even go there to see the guy.
About 4 o'clock.
I woke up around 4 a.m. to use the washroom. When I was returning, my brother told me there are soldiers around beating people.
I was in bed when my mom called me that my brother is beaten outside. So I quickly rushed out, and then I didn't see my brother. So I moved my car to go and look for him. So apparently on the phone with my mom, she said the military guys came to the house, chased him to the house and beat him right in front of our door. My mom was inside. She couldn't come out because they asked her not to come out. So I quickly have to move out and look for my brother. Then I found him somewhere, and I had to just take him to the hospital. So I asked him what happened. He says the military guys just beat him up. That's a piece of some of the broken roots they used to beat people around. At the moment, my mom is very traumatized. Her BP is out of the roof. She can't hold it. She can't hold it. To see her son beaten and she can't come out to do anything about it. It's quite traumatizing for her. So at the moment, she's sleeping and crying at the same time.
Before
I thought they were armed robbers. I got to know they were military men after I got out. I was told to follow them till we got to the roadside. Then I realized there were lots of people there and they were abusing us.
Well, so those are some of the victims of the military invasion of Ashaiman yesterday. Oliver Barker-Vormawor is private legal practitioner. He's also the convener for the Fix the Country movement. He's with us in the studio. Thank you, so Barker-Vormawor, for joining us this evening. So, and it's still in the State of the Nation address. You were expecting the president to talk about this. Why?
I mean, in many respects, I think constitutionally, we've agreed that when we have a president who is head of state, whoever the person is doubles as commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. Mm-hmm. We're in a time of critical national conversations about the role of the Ghana Army and what is done in our communities. But also importantly, a young man has lost his life. A military official who has lost his life under circumstances which do not befit the kind of national image we have of ourselves. I think it is important of a president who has showed no hesitation in tweeting about deaths of people abroad. George Floyd, being an example, would keep mum and shut up about the death of a military officer. I think it's very unfortunate. Especially as I understand now, he's not even reached out to the family or spoken to anybody in the family. I think he doesn't show leadership. And I'm very disappointed that in a moment as the national address, State of the Nation address, he failed to address the issue. But also critically, we are having a conversation about the role and conduct of the military.
So for you, to the extent that, well, he's talked about what's happened in other countries. I mean, you made reference to George Floyd and the murder.
Yeah.
You were expecting that something that's happened in this country, he would capture in the State of the Nation, the State of the Nation address.
So, you know, one of the things we need to be able to understand about what is happening currently is that it's not only a topical issue, but in the past 3 years, there have been at least 10 incidents of military persons going into communities and brutalizing people.
Over the last 3 years?
Over the last 3 years. If you go
incidents.
Back, yes. And, I mean, I'm talking about Ejura, I'm talking about Wa, I'm talking about Ashaiman, I'm talking about Somanya, Boku. So all these incidents have almost a repetitive nature, and it's become a normalized experience of our democracy that military persons are able to jump onto the streets and misconduct themselves in this manner. Everybody is questioning, the voice and the wisdom of political actors in being able to restrain the military when they do these things. So I think that in addressing the nation on this particular time, in this moment, it is a failure of leadership to not mention it and to address it squarely with the nation.
I see, but you see, I spoke to the Deputy Defense Minister yesterday on the show, and I know you followed it quite closely. He said that this is a sanctioned operation by the top command, in fact, the hierarchy of the military.
You know, one of the things which is critical to have, and with all due respect, I'm still holding my breath and believing that the Deputy Minister is going out on a limb and is not speaking on behalf of the government. Because if it is, I think we're in bigger trouble.
He's a Deputy Defense Minister.
Yes, he hasn't spoken, he doesn't speak with authority, he doesn't speak in a way, with a level of maturity that the conversations we need to have
What exactly do you mean, exactly?
What I mean is that we are having a critical conversation about the safety of our democracy to suggest to the majority of Ghanaians that the military high command, without regard to the authority of the commander-in-chief, without regard to the political institutions we have in this country, can deploy military persons onto our streets to deploy both aerial support and also ground forces onto the streets into our communities in a time when war has not been declared. I think it's suggesting that there's undermining the democratic institutions in a way that I don't think he's paying attention to. So I am hoping at least I was hoping that the commander-in-chief himself, given the opportunity on a big stage like Parliament, will be able to speak frankly to the issues, and he failed to do that. And I think we are poorer for it, to be honest.
What does the president's silence on this matter tell you and mean?
I mean, for me, there are two things at play here. That the impunity that we are seeing from the military is something that is sanctioned from the highest up.
That's the
first feeling I get. The other one is equally scary, which is this idea that political office holders are so frightened of the military that even when they misbehave themselves, they are not able to speak squarely to the issue. Then it means that we haven't been able to retire brutality and violence in our democracy that we tried to do in 1992. That undermines people's confidence and faith in the Fourth Republic. And I think that as a president who, for many years, was at the forefront of demanding a return to democracy, he's made a poor job of securing that democracy. If anything at all, he's brought us to a brink where we have to be much more fearful of what could happen to the Fourth Republic.
And you see, this is not the first time. You talk about, for instance, when the Major Mahama was murdered. We saw this, they went to Denchorobasi, the military on their own, rounded a number of people up. We've seen this, about 184 people were rounded up yesterday, 150 have been released, 34 are being held from what we understand. What does the law say about instances like this?
First of all, the law is clear that the military's role has nothing to do with domestic law enforcement. They have no such role. Their interventions in domestic affairs must be sanctioned with the authority of the Commander-in-Chief. The Constitution says regarding the military that they are in charge of external affairs and that they can be deployed by the Commander-in-Chief in issues of national development. Now, in the past, we've had instances where we have used them in joint police and military operations to secure law enforcement, on issues of law enforcement. But in all those instances, it has always been made clear that the police take the operational command, and the military is supposed to provide support. Now, the conversations we're having now is the military taking the law into their own hands. And when they're taking the law into their own hands, it means implicitly that they are breaking the law. And I know that Professor Apije Etua, for instance, has talked about how he is surprised that an IGP who, for instance, wrote 7 pages of letter to the British High Commissioner talking about influence and whatnot, has not been able to speak clearly to assert the jurisdictional sphere and autonomy of the police in investigating these issues. A lot of people have suggested that the reason why the military continue to do this is because of an absence of faith in the police institution. Well, join the club. So many citizens have faced issues within our democracy where they have complained about police conduct or police misconduct. A lot of the times when we criticize the police, we do so in expectation that they would improve their services to us. Not an invitation for citizens to take the law into their own hands. And so much more, if citizens cannot do this, the idea that vigilantism is reserved for the military, persons who are supposed to be disciplined in the way in which they conduct themselves, for some reason they lose all that discipline when they engage civilian populations. And I think that is completely abhorrent and inhuman, to say the least. But in times like this, particularly when we know that the military have no power under our laws to go into communities to arrest anybody at all, to go into the communities to purport to conduct their own intelligence-led operation, either to investigate or to pick up people. They have no power of arrest.
Well, they are holding 34 people in custody from what the MP is saying.
Vis-a-vis the law, that's kidnapping. Now, that's kidnapping. That's kidnapping. Let's be clear on this. Our law says that the police and then private citizens can arrest. Let's assume that in getting into those communities, they're acting as private citizens who are arresting people for crime committed. But the law is clear that the only instances where private citizens can effect citizens' arrest is where persons are in the process of committing a crime. And once they do so, they must immediately hand over the persons to a nearest police station. There's no law or coverage for them keeping the persons in their home or within any of the barracks they have. That is kidnapping citizens in the broad daylight of our democracy. And I don't think that any of our democratic institutions or the voices of conscience in this country should countenance this or be timid in rebuking the military for what they have done. Now, if the fear is that because the military wield guns, we should cower in our ability to speak truth to power, then I think we are losing it as a nation. I have only respect for persons who derive the authority from law and not from the gun. And I think that we all have to be able to speak clearly and concisely to the military for what they have done. I think we all sat through as a nation through the reconciliation years. And we all promised ourselves that never again. This is happening right in front of us. And how we respond to it will be tomorrow will be the judge of it. And I don't want to be able to sleep. I'm not going to sleep and see such violations happen in our democracy and keep quiet about it.
But you see, as established, but earlier we got to know that the police, when this incident first happened, the police actually took up investigation. The murder of this soldier. We said the police had initiated investigations already, even before the military invasion yesterday. I want us to then establish that, and then also now the military now taking matters into their own hands, sort of, to try and seek justice or find the perpetrators of this crime on their colleague by themselves when the police is already investigating. I mean, what does the law say in these instances?
So let's be clear. You're correct. That information that I also have is that the police had picked up a couple of suspects even prior to the military going into the community. Now, I listened to the honorable member, Honorable Nogwe for Ashaiman, where he was talking about his understanding was that the military were looking to enter into the communities on 7th March. Perhaps the significance of the day made them defer it to the next day. Now, if the police have already arrested individuals and continuing investigations, there's no indication about the deficiency of the police action in this case. The military then going into the community suggests that what they went there to do was revenge, was to beat power.
Well, they said that's not what they sought to do. This is in the statement that they issued, which has been deleted the last time we checked.
You know, I don't expect that they were going to admit that this is what they did, in fact. But their actions demonstrate that this is what it is. If it quacks like a duck, you call it a duck. They went in there to brutalize people. They bumped into people's homes, dragged them out, and beat them up. They lined them onto the street, made them roll in mud, and lashed them on our streets in our democracy. This is what they did. They did so only for the purposes of revenge. Now, in the process, they kidnapped 184 citizens. And then they're claiming by that same statement that this was intelligence-led. No intelligence-led operation would lead you to gather 184 citizens at random and release 150 of them. On what basis were those detained to begin with? Now, they're continuing to hold 34 citizens still. I am continuing to urge them that if they have any respect for the remnants of this democracy, if they have any respect for themselves, even if the commander-in-chief refuses to act, that they release those individuals promptly. Now, myself, we're going to be writing to them tomorrow because we have taken up the charge and cause to provide legal representation to all the victims involved.
You're going to provide legal representation?
Absolutely.
To the victims of the brutality?
To all the victims. We have made our doors open. We've put out our numbers there. Our volunteers from tomorrow through Saturday are going to be in the communities, reaching out to every individual who was injured, who was attacked, to reach out to us and get legal representation.
So what's the legal redress that these persons, we've been showing a number of them on television, can resort to in a situation like this?
So the same thing that happened, for instance, with Ejura, that I provided legal representation to the families and they got compensation, that we are going to make every attempt to sue the Ghana Armed Forces.
We're going to sue the Ghana
Armed Forces for what they have done. But beyond that, that is individual attempts to seek redress for this. There's a collective responsibility on the state to be able to provide justice to the individuals affected, which is by ensuring that those who did this do not go scot-free, that they are punished for their actions. And it is important that the Attorney General takes the lead in ensuring that this is done. Because we cannot countenance that and let people walk scot-free. If not, this is not a regime which is based on the rule of law. So privately, we are going to provide that legal support to individuals. Everybody who is attacked, anybody who was dragged out of their homes, anybody who was kidnapped, subsequently released, any encounter with the military, any form of encounter with the military.
That's in Ashaiman.
In Ashaiman.
Okay.
We'll be providing that legal representation for them to sue. And we are inviting persons to reach out.
I see. So, well, that's just for it. And I need to also put out the caution and apologize for the graphic images put out earlier. But this is just to bring you to clear reality of what some of the residents had to deal with in Ashaiman. So that's, you're also beyond this asking that heads must roll. I mean, people must be sacked.
You know,
who are you asking?
It is important that in times of grave brutality like this, we make our law speak loud and clear. That the national soul of this country is restored. And that can happen in many ways. One of them is particularly prosecuting the individuals involved. But also, we are demanding the resignation of the entire military high command.
The entire military high command.
Because they've misconducted themselves and showed themselves incompetent to lead the military in a time of a democracy. And when they have misconducted, yes, that the president is competent to demand for them to place their resignation before his death. It's not the only country that this has happened. So we are demanding that if they see themselves, and in fact they have misconducted themselves, that show that they do not have what it takes, whether it's the credibility, the moral integrity to be able to lead the Ghana Armed Forces in the time of a democracy, that they step aside. And particularly, we are calling on civilized and moderate elements of the military to lead the conversation for reform within the Ghana Armed Forces themselves. Because this is about restoring the dignity and respect for the Ghana Armed Forces, which now is in tatters. For that conversation to be had, I think that the military itself needs to take the role in leading that conversation and ensuring that reform happens, and that the commander-in-chief also wakes up and remembers at least that he's an individual who's been elected, that he wakes up and remembers that he has...
You're talking about the president?
Yes, I'm talking about the president, that he has the mandate of the entire population to act in difficult times. The cowardice is showing that it's not befitting of the role that he occupies.
Oliver Barker-Vormawor, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate
for coming.
It.
He is a convener of the Fix the Country movement. He's a private legal practitioner himself and is indicated, together with his team, providing legal services for the victims of the military brutalities in Ashaiman. So that's just to it. We have a number of you who've been interacting with, so you know how to reach him. But the former president, John Mahama, has also issued a statement on this, and that's what you see there. You find that also on 3news.com. You get the details of it. It's deeply saddened by the death of one of our soldiers at such a young age in Ashaiman. Gives details, and then also including is asking providing commensurate compensation for all persons affected, and then also asking for some investigation into the matter. So that's what's actually happened now and how things are playing out on this particular issue. So this is Ghana Tonight. And remember, it's all part of the State of Nation address because, as Oliver was saying, expecting the Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, the President, to speak about this. Other matters that the President talked about at the State of Nation